All right, we have a quiz on all of our order of operations tomorrow, so this bell ringer is kind of important. Simplify all this stuff. Again, this is the problem that we've seen where we ask ourselves, is there a parentheses? The answer is yes. So 4 times 5 to the third divided by 2. In this problem, again, are there exponents? Yes. So 5 to the third is 5 times 5 times 5, which is 25 times 5. I don't need multiplication for this because when I see 25s, I think of quarters, as long as this number is not out of hand. And I know that 5 quarters is $1.25. Just don't put the decimal and you'll be fine. Now, I don't know what 4 times 125 is because remember, both of these are evenly balanced, so you work out whatever's in front. So I will do that off to the side. 5 times 4 is 20. Carry the 2. 8, 9, 10. Carry the 1. 4, 5. So 500 here. And when you go do 500 divided by 2, there's an easy trick to that. Think about it as 50 divided by 2, which is 25. And then add that 0 that we covered up. It's just 250, I'm sorry. Or do long division or do whatever you need to do to get to that. But that is the general idea there. So with that, moving on, 5 over 1 minus 2 over 3. I think we started seeing this yesterday. The key thing here is that 1 and 3 can both meet at 3 because 1 can be anything. So since that needs to be multiplied by 3, multiply by 3. Since that stayed the same, leave it alone. 15 minus 2 is 13. Leave the 3 where it's at. Again, as a mixed number, that would be 4 1/3, I believe. But I don't need mixed numbers. Just make sure you understand the concept. In this problem, m minus np is where you take the m and plug it in. Take your n, plug it in, take the p and plug it in. That's nothing. It's just a 10 with the parentheses around it, so it's really not important for the parentheses here. But we do want to do our multiplication first, so we'll just copy the 10 and the minus that way. And then turn our 4 times 3 into 12. From there, again, if necessary, turn to plus the opposite. Positive 10, negative 12 makes negative 2. All right. Don't forget on number 4, whenever you divide fractions, that you need to keep the first fraction the same, change this, and then flip the second fraction over. Again, both of these numbers are pretty manageable, so I'll just go ahead and multiply to be 10 over 3, and I don't think I can simplify anything out of 10 and 3, so that is good enough. Again, that was a bell ringer from today. But today's lesson, what we're going to do is look at order of operations with fractions. Tuesday, we looked at order of operations review. Yesterday, we looked at order of operations with some variables and some slightly difficult problems, or more difficult problems. But today, what we're looking at is, how do we deal with the fraction stuff that we need to add in. So our work this week was designed to bring general rules of decision making back to memory so we could face today's work with an open mind. So consider 2 facts. Number 1, you should have a decent level of confidence when it comes to order of operations because of our practice. I'm not saying that you're absolutely confident. I'm not saying you'd get an A plus 100% if you had to do a test right now. But you should have a clue on the order of operations, parentheses, exponents, and so on, as well as when you're supposed to make your decisions with slight mistakes here and there. 2, you should have picked up some more confidence in terms of working with fractions because that's all last week was about, was getting you used to fractions. So in the end, today should not look intimidating. It should simply look new, maybe different. But again, you will not see tons of fractions in your work, but you need to make sure that when you see them, you just relax and execute the necessary steps whenever fractions are involved. So first, let's make sure our understanding of mixing fractions and whole numbers is reviewed. So if you are asked to simplify 4 minus 7/3, you need to remember to put that 4 over 1. Now you say the common denominator is 3. Now because that has to multiply by 3, multiply the 4 by 3. Because that stays the same, leave the 7 the same. 12 minus 7 is 5. 5 over 3 would be your answer. So again, whole number, fraction, being able to deal with both of them is important. If you had 4 times 5/7, the shortcut I showed you was to just go ahead and say 4, send it to the top and leave the bottom number alone, because even if you did top to top, bottom to bottom, the bottom number doesn't change. So 4 times 5 is 20 over 7. So again, making sure you at least have those 2 down. So as long as you remember the rules, everything should work out Just again, understand that it's going to take patience. You're not simply going to find the answer immediately. Your steps will take time. It's not going to be done in 2 seconds. It's not going to be something where you can just quickly look at it and get the answer. But again, don't let the fractions intimidate you, and don't allow the way it looks to make you lose focus on what the process is. So let's look at this. This is a problem that we've seen before, and based off of the fact that we've seen it before, we know what order we need to do it. There is a parentheses there. I don't care about the fraction yet. I have to deal with that when I get to it. Right now, P is the parentheses, which is this. So copy the 1/4, turn 10 minus 6 into 4, copy the squared, copy the divided by 2. The next thing, again, I know we want to get to that 1/4, but order of operation says deal with the exponent first. So 4 squared we know is 4 times 4. 4 times 4 is 16. Now we're looking at 1/4 times 16 divided by 2, and because multiplication and division are balanced, we are going to do 1/4 times 16. And so what I'm going to do, because it is a fraction, is go off to the side and work it out, keeping in mind the whole number goes to the top and that this is just division. 16 divided by 4 is just 4. So what we get out of this is 4 divided by 2, and 4 divided by 2 is 2. So yes, the fraction's there. It's kind of like waiting to take a big test or deal with something that we don't like, but you still have to make the right decision in terms of order, like we did yesterday and the days before, to make sure that we get to this when it's necessary, and then when we get to it, work it out using patience and again the steps that we've learned, and go from there. Same problem that we saw yesterday. The only difference is, okay, now it's got some ugly things in it. So A minus BC. So A is 6 minus B, which is 1/2, times C, which is 3/4. Once again, this is nothing really, but those two get multiplied. So what I'm going to do is go off to the side and figure out what 1/2 times 3/4 is. Because these numbers are manageable, I'm just going to go ahead and multiply and simplify after. 2 times 4 is 8. I think it's just 3/8. So that 6 comes down as 6. 3/8 comes down as 3/8. And now we have 6 minus 3/8. Well, remember that if we're adding or subtracting fractions, we need to turn this 6 into a fraction, which is something that we've learned. From there, we can now, because this is our problem, we can actually work it out right here. 8 will be our common denominator. That has to multiply by 8. That stays the same. 48 minus 3 is 45 over 8. And that's actually, I think they want a mixed number. So 8 goes into 45 5 times with 5 left over out of 8. And that's good. Now, if you don't use a mixed number, that's fine. But I think this is the only one that's going to want you to use a mixed number whenever you do it. All right. So those represent the key concepts for your quiz. Let's just look at them one more time, because it can't really get enough practice on that stuff. So again, 2/3 times this problem. Parentheses is first. So again, even though we see that 2/3, we have to make decisions in order. So that'll be 2/3 times 13 minus, I'm sorry. It'll be 2/3 times 3 squared divided by 2. The next thing is not the fraction, it's the exponent first. So 3 squared turns into 9. Now that we have multiplication division, we deal with whoever's in front. So again, I will go off to the side and do 2/3 times 9. Send the whole number to the top, which is 18. And 18 divided by 3, I believe, is 6. So that turns into 6 divided by 2, which is 3. So in the end, I don't think the fraction really does much. Here's what the fraction does. If you haven't practiced it, if you don't know how to do fractions, that fraction kills you, because you don't know how to do what you're supposed to do. But if you've worked with the fractions, if you've at least tried to get somewhat comfortable with them, it really does nothing but just give you an uglier answer. But again, it's not an ugly answer that you can't deal with. Same thing with this one, as we saw earlier. W is 3 plus 5/3 times 7/5. This gets done first because it's multiplication. So bring down your 3. We have to now do 5/3 times 7/5. Before I do that, I recognize there's a 5 on top and bottom. So what happens is both of these turn into 1s, which means now when I do that, I get 7 on top and 3 on the bottom. So 3 plus 7/3. Keeping in mind, again, whenever I add a whole number and a fraction, I want to put that whole number over 1. 1 and 3 both meet at 3. This has to multiply by 3, making it 9. That 3 stayed the same, so 7 stayed the same. 9 plus 7 is 16 over 3. And again, if you're converting that, which you don't think you have to, 3 goes into 16 5 times with 1 left over out of 3, and that is what you're looking at. Okay. So notice that the general expectation for the quiz tomorrow does not have a high level of difficulty in terms of order. With our past 2 weeks of practice, we should be comfortable understanding what operation to do first. All we have to do is just learn to trust your fraction practice, and everything else will fall into place. So if you were in class, you would have a pre-assessment, but what I'm going to do is just work only on the pre-assessment. But again, what I'm going to do is have you pause it and then work through the answers so you can see. But the questions on the first 9 of this question is it. So take a second on 1, 2, and 3. Pause it, work them out, and see where you stand, and then I'll work them out in just a second. Addition, subtraction are evenly balanced. Whatever's in line first goes first. You should have got the answer of 11. Again, look for your mistake if you made it, and make sure if you don't see it, you talk to me soon. In number 2, that's multiplication and division. That's not a parentheses, so therefore we do whatever's in line first. 54 divided by 9 is 6. 6 times 3 is 18. Again, in order to get your credit tomorrow, make sure you're showing me all those steps. Don't just put the final answer. You need to show me the steps. Here, parentheses, no, even though that's there. Remember, that's not parentheses, that's multiplication. Exponents, no. Multiplication, division, yes. So we have to deal with whatever's in front. 40 divided by 2 is 20. Well, I think I messed up there, huh? 50 minus 200, because again, there's your multiplication plus 1. I truly messed up. 50 minus 200, I'm just going to tell you, is negative 150. Well, I don't think that's going to be on your test. But if you had negative 150 plus 1, obviously the negatives win by 149. Again, 50 minus 200, if you had 50 bucks and you wanted to buy something for 200, you'd be in debt by 150. And if you paid $1 to that 150, you would still be in debt at 149. However you need to think about that, just make sure you try to get that down. Take a moment to pause 4 and 5, and then I'll work those out for you. Again, every single one of these questions is on your test. Here, there is a parentheses to do. There is also an exponent. 8 squared is 8 times 8, which is 64. 2 times 64, maybe you don't know, so go off to the side. There you go, 128 divided by 2. And if you don't know what 128 divided by 2 is, set it up. 2 does not go into 1, but it does go into 12. 6 times. With nothing left over, bring down the 8. 2 goes into 8 4 times clean, which means my answer should just be 64. All right. 4w to the third when w is 5. Again, when I see this, it means take the 5 and substitute using parentheses. So 5 to the third is 5, 5, and 5. That is 25 times 5. Remember, I said 5 quarters is $1.25. Just don't put the decimal because there's no decimals in this part. And then 4 times 125, I think, is 500 because we did this a couple days ago. 5 times 4 is 20. 4 times 2 is 8 plus 2 is 10. 4 times 1 is 4 plus 1 is 5. It is 500. That's where we are. Take a moment to pause and try 6 and 7, which is, a fraction 1 and a negative squared. See what you can do and look out for your mistakes. Remember that the first thing we want to do is deal with the parentheses. So it'll be 1/2 times 6 squared divided by 2. The next thing we want to do is deal with the exponent. 6 squared is 36. Now that it's multiplication and division, we want to deal with whatever's in front. So 1/2 times 36. 36 goes up to the top, which is 36 over 2. And if you don't know what 36 divided by 2 is, do it the old-fashioned way and do the long division. 2 goes into 3 one time without passing it up. 2 goes into 16 8 times. 18 divided by 2, and 18 divided by 2 is 9. Number 7. Again, when you see simplify this when f equals -6, it means plug that -6 in over here typically. So we do that using parentheses. There is no parentheses because even though there's nothing on the inside. That can be worked out. Exponents first. Just again remember that when you take a negative square, there's two negatives, which means that 6 squared is a positive 36, not a negative 36. Next thing we want to do is make sure we know that that's multiplication subtraction. This is obviously stronger. 2 times 6 is 12. Carry the 1. 6, 7, so 72. And 72 minus 7, again, if you don't know, set it up. Can't do 2 minus 7, so we borrow, turn that to 12. 12 minus 7 is 5. 65 should be your answer there. One more set of problems before we end this off, but again, this is your quiz, so make sure that you're understanding what's going on. G minus nx when g is equal to 23 and so on. Go ahead and pause the video, work those last two out. This would become 23 minus 6 times 5. Keeping in mind that's just a regular number, but those two are getting multiplied, so that's stronger. Also remember, you don't really need to copy the parentheses, but 6 times 5 turns into 30. If it helps to help you view it, do plus the opposite. Positive 23, negative 30. The negatives win by 7, or just remember that because they're different, that you actually subtract 30 from 23 to get 7 using all the stuff you would do, and because the negative is bigger, that's a negative 7. On this one, h minus my when h is 4, so 4 here, minus 2/5, 7/2. Again, that number doesn't have anything going on, so we need to multiply, so copy your 4 and your minus. Let's go off to the side and figure out what 2/5 times 7/2 is. Well, here's the thing. I have a 2 on top and bottom, so 1 there, which means 1 times 7 is 7, 5 times 1 is 5, so I have 4 minus 7/5. Remember that if I want to add a number and a whole number and a fraction, turn that whole number into a fraction. These two will meet at 5, so I have to multiply this by 5. That stayed the same, so that stays the same. Copy the symbol. 20 minus 7 is 13 over 5, which is your answer, which again, if you want to convert that, would be 2 3/5. So again, you have a quiz on this stuff tomorrow. If you're at home, you need to make sure that you're ready for it. You can practice on the quiz practice as much as possible, but again, if you're at home and not a home schooled student, then you have to actually take that test in class. So just make sure you've got it down, and the day you get back into class, make sure you talk to me and let me know so I can have you take it in class. So outside of that, I will talk to you later, and good luck.